All right. Welcome to our third episode. I'm Ali.
And I'm Somil.
So today we're going to talk about something very interesting. But before we get started, Somil, we got a lot of questions on what do we mean by BizOps.
Yeah.
Can you tell our audience what is that? What do we
I
mean?
think the shortest definition for BizOps is that it's a way to package your data, your intelligence, your decisions and your actions into one little box, and then you give it to the front line. You basically push it to where your operation is happening, where the real action is, so that there is more adaptability and you can actually take decisions in real time. And I think that's how you build adaptability and resilience. I think for me, that's how I define BizOps.
Yeah, so basically BizOps is equal DevOps or MLOps for decisions and actions, the same way as you do. The software developers take care of the operations. The people who run the operation and execution take care of decisions and actions.
Yes.
All right. But then that basically is a good segue to what we really wanted to talk about. And the topic is next best action, or NBAs, not to be confused with the famous basketball league. But what do we mean by NBAs?
Yes. I think it's a very interesting strategy. I think NBAs are usually mostly used in the context of customer engagement, where you depending on the context of the customer, depending on what their history has been, what they have done, who they are, and depending on where they are in the journey, we present them with the most relevant and maybe the most significant alternatives that makes the customers feel that you as an organization understand them, care about them, and also for organizations to navigate the huge complexity of the products and services and offerings and messaging to really focus on what's really important in that moment for that particular customer. I think that's how I define next best action.
Cool. And I think the key here is that we're basically taking that to the next level and saying like anything that optimizes your decisions is your next best action, right?
In that moment, yes.
Exactly.
In a given I think what we're trying to do is maybe can I take a bit of a tangent here?
Go on a detour, my friend.
Okay, so back in 2012 or 11, something like that, there was an article published in Harvard Business Review, which was on the customer decision journey. So if you look at the traditional marketing, it was a very kind of a linear funnel where there was all the brands that customers are aware of. Out of that, they select the one they want to buy. So your awareness set, a consideration set, choice set, and then finally the thing that they bought. But Harvard, the HBR article, it showed that it's not that simple. In fact, it's more interactive because the brands, it's not like consumers just keep narrowing the list. They interact with the environment, they interact with other people, and the set keeps changing. So even they might have eliminated a particular option in the earlier stage, they can always bring it back. That was, I think, the basic of this understanding of interactivity with of a customer or a user with its environment and how that impacts a strategy. And now if you look at the way processes are structured, in most cases, if you have like a very full functional ERP, they would have considered all the possible scenarios. And I think I met some of these experts, the business experts, process experts, whose job is to think about all the possible scenarios things can go wrong and then program all of that into the into the software. And then there are many such experts who are in different levels, and then you end up with a very complicated software and no one really knows how to use it. And I think next best action really is about cutting through all that bureaucracy and cutting through all that complexity and really focusing on, okay, here's my customer or here's my user, these are the problems that they are facing right now, these are the three things that they can possibly do, which one is the best one? I think that's how simple it could be. I think that's what this next best strategy is about, in my view.
Yeah, and I think it's an important strategy to think about because first of all, you can't really predict everything, right? As long as you want to be the next Oracle in the Matrix to know what's going to happen and see the future and the past, and so on, or what was it called in the Game of Thrones, the three-eyed raven. You can't be that, right? You can't see all possibilities. So the best is to react to the events that come your way and try to optimize your decisions based on that and based on what you know your long-term plan is.
Exactly.
I would actually say that it also, because of all these uncertainties in operations and not only the customers, this strategy is getting more and more traction, not only because of the uncertainties that we're facing every day now, and the predictability is basically over, but also because of the rise of the AI agents, right? So to give the AI agents something to do, you can't just basically tell them, okay, go plan for all these scenarios. Yeah, you can do that, but it's probably the bad use of their technology. So focusing them on very specific data-driven actions or decisions for you to be made, and being this support mechanism for decision optimization next to humans, that's where things go.
Yes. And can I take one more detour?
Yeah, we're here. We like detours here, so
Yes.
go for
So
it.
I think I really love some of the history, the business history, management history. So two things happened in the maybe 100 years ago or so, or maybe a little more than that. The first one was the Toyota production system, which introduced the concept of lean to the world. And there are many different concepts, and people have tried to. Incidentally, what happened was Toyota built the entire system, and GM tried to copy that whole setup, just machine by machine, process by process. But they could not achieve anything because they were missing the essence. So if you look at the essence of lean, it's about value and about aligning with value as soon as possible and all the time. So from one perspective, next best action is allows you to do that. I think it's lean in its purest form, that you are basically updating your entire setup, or you're updating your assumptions, you're updating your delivery method based, or even the offering based on what the value is at that point for that particular customer. So I think that's the purest form of lean. The second example is, I think we spoke about it earlier, which was this OODA loop, this observe, orient, decide, and act, coined by Colonel James Boyd, which is basically a decision making framework for fighter pilots. Because when you are flying like in Mach 2, you don't have time to think in the terms of the wise maverick. When you're up there, you think, you die. So it's really about taking those quick, fast decision cycles, not major decisions, but like, okay, what's my next move? And it's actually a set of moves and counter moves between you and the other person that basically helps you win. And what Colonel Boyd said was, if you have a decision loop which is faster than the other person, then you can basically dominate. Your strategy can dominate theirs, because by the time they figure out what's happening, you've already changed your orientation. And that's the only thing that gives you some kind of advantage up in the sky. Now, if you take that to business, I think it's very relevant, for most companies who are trying to solve their supply chain challenges, operational challenges, right? So one is, how do you be, and they want to be lean. So I think one of the way to be lean is not to talk about everything else that is happening, but really focus on that one decision. And also, basically, what kind of tools can you give? Because the life of most of your planners and analysts is like that, who are they're always always in that in the cockpit of a fighter jet, always having all self complexity everywhere. How can they get into the loop, have a faster decision cycle than the environment, or than your customers, and they can take the next best decision and always be on top of the competition, right? So yeah, two quick detours, just remembered based on the conversation.
So while we're on doing detours, I want to go to Netflix now, because basically what we're saying with next best action is the same as what Netflix or any other digital platform does with their recommendations, right? The recommendations Netflix gives you are based on what they think your next best action should be as a user. And they're trying to optimize your experience. So the user experience has become a big thing in the next best action strategy. As an example, can you think of any other example, Samil?
I think one of the things that we mentioned with Morgan Stanley, and I think I think, and this the video is available on YouTube. Maybe we can post a link to that later. But what they've done is they have built a platform for their asset managers and wealth managers, and because they have the same problem, they have to deal with so many different customers, and market is never static; it's always changing, right? What is the best advice you can give a particular person? Now, if you try to do this in a traditional way, then the person, in this case, the wealth manager, will have to go through thousands of research reports, be up to date with the market trends, be also understand the customer's history and their current situation. Really, a lot of time and effort will go into understanding that and giving the right advisory to their clients. So what they've done is, okay, how about if we can automate that, because here we have a very good, very intelligent agent that could do all of that and basically give the advisors three things. That's it, and they can choose the three things. So you give them the three alternatives or three recommendations. You tell them the reason for those recommendations, and you tell them the impact of those recommendations, and then you let them choose. And I think that strategy, I think they have now scaled up to 15,000 managers or wealth managers. I think this is a great example how you can use next best action as a strategy for delivering value, because if you look at from Morgan Stanley's perspective, every recommendation that a customer acts on translates directly into revenue or commissions for them. So it's really about the bread and butter. I mean, I don't think anything can be more strategic and operational at the same time.
Exactly, and that's basically where we speak about operations-led strategy. This is a very good example of that. Morgan Stanley, how they've done it, and the fact that now they have rolled it up to 15,000. Right? You said,
yeah, something like that. I think it's 15,000.
Is amazing. But at the same time, I think the way this strategy works, that's what I like about it, is that you really enable your people to follow guidelines and processes without really having to care about them or knowing them. And you can change the processes behind the scene in the back end without them knowing about that anyway. Because the next best action recommendation, or I should say NBA recommendations, to confuse people, is done by checking against your processes, right?
Yes.
The recommendations do not come to you if they don't meet the guidelines set, the boundaries set by your company. Then there's something horribly wrong with your next best action strategy if you're doing that. That becomes a problem. So by using this strategy, you're automatically following your compliance guidelines, you're following your process guidelines, you're following your planning and strategy without having to really force people to read a lot of follow a lot of bureaucracy or read a lot of documents.
I completely agree with you. I think if you talk about the maturity of a process, or we don't talk about the design of a process, but in my view, if you look at a great process, then we have to think it from, like, it has to be foolproof. It has to be something that guarantees the necessary outcome, and it basically completely blocks the unwanted or the the action that is not allowed. I think that should be the gold standard for any processes. So in a way, what we can also derive is, if focus on a next best strategy, a next best action, it could lead to more mature processes, more intelligent processes. And I think if people have to look up manuals to understand your process, then there's something wrong. I mean, we should just accept it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think you can that leaves you to be free to optimize the process as much as you want, analyze the process as you want, much as you want, and then your people are doing what they need to do. And on top of that, I think with focusing on this, optimizing decision making, and adding the intelligence, and going back to what we said about AI agents, adding co-workers, whatever you want to call them, you are also basically reducing the amount of firefighting your people are doing.
Okay,
If you,
wait, hold on a bit. I want to get this covered a bit in depth. So let me ask you this question. How do you think next best action enables the agentic transformation or agent adoption? Can you break that down a bit for
so
us?
let's take a step back, right? The ultimate utopia of agentic AI is to have AI models that make the same decisions, that make the same actions, or at least assist in doing so to your employees. That's basically your utopia. But the current setup of, okay, here is a big list of things that you will do, you can't give an AI agent a job description. Well, you can, but it's not very optimistic and not optimized for doing so. Whereas by having a strategy like the next best action of making a decision based on the event that occurred, the actual data that you have, the boundaries you have, that's where AI models are very good at, right?
Mhm.
And then it becomes a statistics game. And either they recommend it to a human, or over time, as they learn, they can make some of those decisions. And one very key important aspect of that is that it not only enables you to have the AI agents really close to where the action is and where things happen, close to the humans, and have a hybrid workforce set up, but also because by nature next best action is limited in scope, limited in impact compared to making giant decisions, but also limited in where things happen, it makes it much easier to govern, both from a
Yeah.
compliance perspective, but also from any other ways of governing those models perspective. So you're limiting the risk of doing some really crazy stuff at a large scale. And then you have a very quick feedback loop of what did we do wrong?
Yeah. I think
So
I
you
would
can
like to
actually adjust.
maybe I was never a good at, coloring. And I used to always color outside the line. And one thing my teacher once observed and told me, like, Samuel, you make like very big strokes. So when you make big strokes, you have a higher probability of coloring outside the line. And then you have actually a lot of color outside the line. And what you're saying is with next best action, if you are basically doing is making a lot of very fast, small strokes that also tell us how good the coloring is, and also, first of all, reduce the probability of coloring outside the line. And even if that happens, it's going to be like not very noticeable.
Exactly. And basically, keeping your analogy, it's like digitizing a picture.
Hmm.
You're dividing it into small pixels. And the smaller the pixels are, the better the quality becomes because you don't see those overlaps or a bit messy lines and so on, right? So the
Yeah.
smaller the pixel are, the better the picture becomes. So one other thing that I wanted to also touch on is how does next best action enable BizOps?
Hmm.
And because these two, in my mind and in our mind, are tightly coupled if you really want to have successful strategies in this topic. How do you see that, Tomil?
I think if you look at operations in general, I think I want to just draw the contrast between operations and planning. So if you look at any operations, anything, they usually happen sequentially. So you deliver, you basically, if your planners, your analysts, they look at one order or one item or one delivery or one shipment or one transport or one booking. So it's always like very specific with respect, because operations really is about that customer and that item and that product and that price, very very specific. And I think what we do in planning is we average them out arbitrarily. I'm saying arbitrarily because, of course, there's some intelligence. Still, most of the planning that is happens on averages. If you look at the classification of products or classification of customers, it's very arbitrary. So very arbitrary. We look at a collection of customers or products or items or prices, and we basically try to optimize it together on an average. We built our reporting and most of the BI logic also on averages, and the average is really the killer of excellence. So with BizOps, you have the opportunity to really optimize each and every item or a transaction, just like you would do the whole planning. So you can actually doing in BizOps, you're taking one very minute atomic item or atomic entity of your business, and you're doing the entire planning and operation together, and that's very much optimized for that situation or for that specific entity. So I think when you work like this, the accuracy of your decisions becomes a lot more higher, because you're not approximating things. The feedback that you get from the business, it could be about your profitability or about your competitive position, that feedback is also very rich and very actionable. So overall, if I look at BizOps as a strategy, fits a lot better with operations rather than planning. Of course, planning is needed, and we still need to have some kind of a general direction. But a general direction will not help you reach your destination. When you really go down, I mean, you can't just send someone to say, okay, go to Gothenburg. That's not going to happen. You have to give them the street address. You have to give them the basically the exact position, and you have to do that with millions of people, for example. You cannot be generic. You can't just send people in a general direction. You have to be very specific, and you have to do that at scale. And if you have to do that in a iteratively or repeatably, I think that's where BizOps comes into a picture. It's personalization at scale. It's customization at scale. It's really going very specific and very accurate at scale. I think that's where how I see BizOps fitting into operations.
And so maybe we should start summarizing and wrapping up now. So if I summarize what we talk about, next best action, it's basically creating a recommendation on what is your next best decision or action based on the events you're getting, and focusing on that by collecting the data and information you have on your general directions, as you said, right? And developing that in a way that can actually create these incremental moves towards your direction, but it is focusing on what should you do next and optimizing the decision, the next decision, and the next decision. And that's something that I see very useful for the future of deploying lots and lots of AI agents into.
Yep.
Cool. So Somil, what else are we going to talk about in the future?
I think we have to take a deeper dive into BizOps as how it applies to different companies. I would love to also, dig a bit deeper into how operations can be a competitive strategy. I think we are seeing a lot. I think the feedback that we're getting from the leaders is that operations is no longer something that you just do. It has risen to the importance of a very very strategic component of your business. I think we can see how BizOps, how the new generation AI and agents can actually help us elevate operations to its rightful place.
Exactly. So if you're a COO or SVP operations or VP operations, you should consider yourself as one of the key competitive advantages of your company now, and look into how do you really build this operation strategy to do so.
Yeah, and your
Let's
job's
talk
gonna
about
get
that
very
next time.
sexy.
Yeah. Turning cost centers into revenue centers and competitive advantages. That's the most fun thing you can do in a company.
Exactly.
So we'll talk about that next time. For now, thank you so much for listening, and goodbye from me.
Goodbye. See you next time.